Hi, today I have a reading from A Course in Miracles. So this is the 65th reading I've done. It is from Chapter 8, The Journey Back, Section 5, The Undivided Will of the Sonship. So this is something we can keep tuning into and remembering. Our actual will is one will. It's God's will. It's shared. And if God is a problem for you, just think of our unification, or just think of what's real versus unreal. The real will versus the hallucinated, conflicting, and separate wills. Okay, so paragraph 1. Can you be separated from your identification and be at peace? Dissociation is not a solution, it is a delusion. The delusional believe that truth will assail them, and they do not recognize it because they prefer the delusion. Judging truth as something they do not want, they perceive their illusions, which block knowledge. Help them by offering them your unified mind on their behalf, as I am offering you mine on behalf of yours. Alone we can do nothing, but together our minds fuse into something whose power is far beyond the power of its separate parts. By not being separate, the mind of God is established in ours and as ours. This mind is invincible because it is undivided. So your true mind, which you share with all, is the mind of God. And it's powerful and it's invincible, and there's nothing to fear in that power. So alone we can do nothing, but together our minds fuse, and this is you and Jesus and everyone, into something whose power is far beyond the power of its separate parts. So you don't have to ever do anything alone, and you can think of being accompanied and helped and assisted in everything you seem to do by the power of the mind. That's our one mind. And as we focus on our one mind and the one will we share for perfect happiness, then that focus brings us the specific ideas of what we should carry out, what we should say, what thoughts become present in our minds come from this one undivided mind, our undivided will, the power of that, the beneficial power of that. Alone we can do nothing, but together our minds fuse into something whose power is far beyond the power of its separate parts. I've been encountering beliefs in being alone, and it being possible to be alone or victimized, just kind of root beliefs at the root of the separate identity. And this can feel very challenging as we've set down our other beliefs, and then we get to another layer we're working through, and then we run into these beliefs that seem to be the core of the separate identity, and our belief in our separate identity versus another separate identity. It can seem very intense, these challenges. It has seemed very intense for me today. So it's a really great relief for me to remember no one is alone, and we cannot do anything real alone. We can imagine this, but that's not real. But together our minds fuse into something whose power is far beyond the power of its separate parts. That together power feels much better than any separate power anyone could seem to have against another one. So kind of resting and taking a bath in that is always very comforting, very uplifting. Okay, paragraph 2. The undivided will of the sonship is the perfect creator, being wholly in the likeness of God, whose will it is. You cannot be exempt from it if you are to understand what it is and what you are. By the belief that your will is separate from mine, from the will of Jesus, you are exempting yourself from the will of God, which is yourself. So the will of God is you. That's a different way of thinking about you. And then you can extend that to everyone and everything. What is it? It's the will of God. That's a different way of looking at it. I have to find my place. I looked away. Okay, there it is. Yet to heal is still to make whole. Therefore, to heal is to unite with those who are like you, because perceiving this likeness is to recognize the Father. If your perfection is in Him and only in Him, how can you know it without recognizing Him? The recognition of God is the recognition of yourself. There is no separation of God and his creation. You will realize this when you understand that there is no separation between your will and mine. Again, your will and the will of Jesus. Let the love of God shine upon you by your acceptance of me. My reality is yours and his. By joining your mind with mine, you are signifying your awareness that the will of God is one. So, we're just repeating, by joining your mind with mine, you are signifying your awareness that the will of God is one. So what can we do in any situation? Before we physically do something, we can intentionally join our mind with Jesus's mind. And then we're in our right mind. That's the right mind. That's joined with everyone and everything. And then we're signifying our awareness that the will of God is one. So if we think these separate, disparate, attacking things can come at us or anyone else, we're forgetting the truth of the will of God for perfect happiness, and we're imagining fictions on top of that and experiencing them. And we might be tired of putting ourselves through this cycle again and again. So by joining your mind with mine, you are signifying your awareness that the will of God is one. Signifying our awareness of something true and vital and important is something we can do before we do anything else. We can pause and remember, my will is God's and everyone's will is the same as that. I might be imagining something different, but I wouldn't be right about that. I'd just be crazy. And the will of God is one. It's one will. We all share it. If I would like to see this play out in illusion, I can. That's the last illusion. Last illusion. I didn't want to say delusion. There's an illusion Holy Spirit can give us where it's clear that the will of God is one, and this is nothing we have to be frightened of. Or we can continue imagining as we have imagined about conflicting wills. So just taking that step into the other option and knowing it's our choice, that's a very powerful thing. Okay, so paragraph 3, God's oneness and ours are not separate because his oneness encompasses ours. To join with me, again Jesus, is to restore his power to you because we are sharing it. I offer you only the recognition of his power in you, but in that lies all truth. As we unite with him. Glory be to the union of God and his holy sons. All glory lies in them because they are united, and the them and the they are capitalized. The miracles we do bear witness to the will of the Father for his Son, and to our joy in uniting with his will for us. So back to join with me is to restore his power to you because we are sharing it. And just again, that idea of before you do anything, you can join with Jesus and go from that as your foundation to recognize that your mind is one with his, and his is a very sane mind because he has allowed the insanity to leave it. So all you have to do is join your mind with his. And yes, there are other cultural symbols. This is just the idea of a non-physical helper taking the idea of the one who dropped all of his insanity to join fully with what is actually here. He's like our big brother who's helping us do the same thing. But that doesn't have to be exclusionary. If culturally Jesus isn't it for you, you have some other symbol that's helpful to you. To join with me is to restore his power to you. So his power, the one power we all share, God's power, it's always been ours, but we've blocked it out. We've pretended we didn't have it. But when we intentionally remember that my mind and the mind of Jesus are one, the mind of Christ, that's the one mind we share, then his power, the one power we share, is restored to me and everyone in my sight. And of course, love can extend from all of us. And the miraculous things we see when we allow this online fully It's like nothing we've ever thought of before. It's I don't know how to talk about it, so I won't. I should just focus on right now. And the forms are not important, but you get to the point where you allow the form to change radically because the forms are not important. And that seems to be the key to this whole thing. But in the meantime, there's this learning to be in our right mind consistently and to focus appropriately. So that's where we're focusing right now, this learning and this unlearning. Okay, paragraph 4. When you unite with me, you are uniting without the ego, because I have renounced the ego in myself, and therefore cannot unite with yours. Our union is therefore the way to renounce the ego in you. The truth in both of us is beyond the ego. Our success in transcending the ego is guaranteed by God, and I share this confidence for both of us and all of us. I bring God's peace back to all His children because I received it of Him for us all. Nothing can prevail against our united wills because nothing can prevail against God's. There isn't anything but God's will. That's why nothing can prevail. So back to, I bring God's peace back to all His children because I, Jesus, received it of Him for us all. And in any moment of stress, turning toward Jesus means I'm willing to accept God's peace. And that's all I need. And Jesus received it, and Jesus can distribute it to everyone, or whatever non-physical helper you have, or whatever physical helper you have. Someone or something can remind you of this and can help you accept the peace that is real, that never went away, that we pretend wasn't here. That's our full and shared power. And so turning toward Jesus is one way of doing that, to accept the peace that is here for everyone and allow that peace to be in charge, to provide all of our thoughts, to seem to cause all of our speech, to seem to cause all of our action, which are really only perceptions. So to fully correct our perception. Okay. Paragraph 5. Would you know the will of God for you? Spoiler alert, the will of God for you is perfect happiness, and for everyone. And no one's getting punished, so yeah, that's nothing to fear. Ask it of me who knows it for you, and you will find it. I will deny you nothing as God denies me nothing. Ours is simply the journey back to God, who is our home. Whenever fear intrudes anywhere along the road to peace, it is because the ego has attempted to join the journey with us and cannot do so. So I had a prolonged period of time today where I was experiencing that, trying to calmly work with what seemed like this big fear that had surfaced. So that's what was happening. The ego was attempting to join the journey with me and Jesus, and the ego can't do that. So, sensing defeat and angered by it, the ego regards itself as rejected and becomes retaliative. So we can see through all this. And I did have some victim-oriented thoughts surface tonight, some retaliative-oriented thoughts, thinking somebody else wasn't good enough or didn't do enough. And this was just thinking of having the past surface and having thoughts about the past come to me, and I could eventually see that as a temptation. I wanted to set down. I can't be thinking about that stuff, and I need to see things in a sane way. You are invulnerable to its retaliation, the retaliation of ego, because I am with you. On this journey, you have chosen me as your companion instead of the ego. So we can have one or two, number one or number two. Do I want the ego as my companion, or do I want Jesus as my companion? And as we go along, we can see more and more. We want Jesus, or whatever form is your companion, instead of ego, as the companion. On this journey, you have chosen me as your companion instead of the ego. Do not attempt to hold on to both, or you will try to go in different directions and will lose the way. So this is something I think we do over and over and over again. as we're learning. We do try to hold on to both. We haven't fully let go of the ego yet, and we start holding on to it, and we feel terrible and very afraid, and like afraid of death, and have terrible thoughts about the past, and then we recognize this is nuts. I can't do this. I can't keep doing this. And I think we will keep going back and forth till we understand fully the uselessness and pointlessness of that, and we are not tempted anymore by any of the thoughts the ego puts under our way, because we know right away they're poison. I don't know right away. I can get pulled in and lost and have to find my way out again, but it's getting easier and easier to find my way out. Okay. So you are invulnerable to its retaliation, ego's retaliation, because I am with you. This is something very comforting I can remember when I do say yes to the temptation of egoic thought and get myself stuck in a little whirlpool, and I have to kind of hold still until I emerge from that. You are invulnerable to ego's retaliation because I am with you. Jesus is with us. And we are invulnerable, and the ego can't get us. So any punishments it's promising for us or anyone else are just fictional, and they don't have to be experienced. Who is with us? Jesus is with us. If Jesus is with us, the ego cannot be. We choose one or the other. So more and more we can consciously make that choice. And know it's the wise thing, it's the sane thing to choose Jesus as your companion instead of the ego. Okay, paragraph 6. The ego's way is not mine, but it is also not yours. The Holy Spirit has one direction for all minds, and the one he taught me is yours. Let us not lose sight of his direction through illusions, for only illusions of another direction can obscure the one for which God's voice speaks in all of us. Never accord the ego the power to interfere with the journey. It has none, because the journey is the way to what is true. That's important. I shouldn't accord the ego the power to interfere with the journey. Even as I'm acknowledging that I get tempted and I mess around with it for a while. But I shouldn't give it the power to interfere with the journey. It has none because the journey is the way to what is true. Leave all illusions behind and reach beyond all attempts of the ego to hold you back. And when we go into meditation, that's what we're doing. Even if we just focus inward for a minute, because you might be anywhere in your meditation journey. You might think that you're a much better meditator than someone else, or you might think, I can't meditate for even a second, and both of you are equal. If we look inward even for a second with true sincerity, we're looking past the ego. Okay. Reach beyond all attempts of the ego to hold you back. I go before you because I am beyond the ego. Reach therefore for my hand because you want to transcend the ego. My strength will never be wanting, and if you choose to share it, you will do so. So the strength of Jesus will never be lacking in any way. I give it willingly and gladly because I need you as much as you need me. So Jesus needs all of us as one to wake up and rise up and leave our illusion. And his hand is always stretched back toward us. He's always leading. So thank goodness we can follow. The relief of following is immense. My strength will never be wanting, and if you choose to share it, you will do so. That is the every moment opportunity we have. We can share the strength that Jesus has to share or not. And again, we do not have to put it in terms of Jesus. Other words will come to us if it's necessary and helpful to fit whatever symbols are meaningful to anyone we're with. But of course, in Miracles is Jesus is the author. So that's the form it takes for us. Okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you. I'm working on my end, as I'm sure you're working on yours. And as we look inward, we're going to the same place, the loving place where our minds are connected. So thank you for all the efforts you're making on behalf of waking up, and I am doing the same over here. Happy healing.